Let's get going in 3, 2, 1, go. Got Phantasy Star 2, 80%. Anybody who knows the game knows it's slow and long and really difficult, but I'm going to make use of some glitches on the speedrun to make it nice and easy. First thing to note about this game is it's got the best tech smashing of any RPG. You can advance the text every frame, so it's really just up to you to be fast. There's no weird timing or anything like that. So the first thing that's going to happen is that I'm going to empty Rolf's or ABWX's inventory. And then we're going to head to storage. And then we're going to Nay's inventory. And then go into Rolf's. No, he doesn't have one, which glitches out his inventory. So now he's just got like this infinite inventory. You can basically just continue to scroll outside of the menu itself, and you'll still be tracking item slots and stuff like that. Probably just gonna do a bunch of stuff and not really say a whole lot because counting is really hard to concentrate on, but I'll get back to it in a little bit. Okay, so it's kind of a lot to get into. As mentioned before, you kind of glitch out the inventory, and there's like 200 or something item slots that all relate to something, of course. And so the slot that I'm going into a lot in most cases is slot 46 and 56, which affects the stats of the next person. So Rolf's slot 56 affects Nay's. 56 affects her agility, I believe, and then 46 affects her agility and 56 affects her defense. So what you can do is, and then every item in this game has some sort of numeric value, right? So what happens from there is that if I pull from item slot 56, which is Nay's defense, it will read her defense value, and then whatever number that is, it will then pull the item that has that numeric value. So if her defense is 1, and I pull from her defense slot, then whatever item has the value of 1 is the item I'm going to pull from there. And so a lot of what happens there is like I might take her armor on or take it off or whatever. It will change her defensive value, and even though I'm pulling from the same slot every time, it'll pull a different item. And so all you have to do is know, for the items you want, what value they have, and then just manipulate her defense to get that number. And so what I was able to do, for the most part, is pull out a lot of key items you would normally have to work really hard to get, and grind a bunch of levels, and deal with a bunch of terrible dungeons. Instead, I can just pull it out of the inventory and not have to worry about it. One of the other things I did, too, is I got the key item for that cutscene, and I duped it. And even though I played the cutscene, when I walk back in, it plays it again, and and it kind of glitches out your location, so I'm able to kind of walk through walls. And the most important thing there is that I don't get any encounters anymore, because that area is actually pretty dangerous. The other casual part about this game is every time you visit a new town, you recruit a new party member, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm getting Rudo and Amy, and I'm going to glitch out. Oh, so I didn't do it at all, excuse me. Yeah, so you have to actually put them in your party. And then we're going to do the same thing to Rudo, so I'm going to empty his inventory. I'm going to walk back into storage, enter someone else's inventory who actually has one, and then enter Rudo's, and then his is going to glitch out, and I'm going to pull a specific key item out of his inventory. Kind of the key gist of it here is there are a lot of key items to progress through the game slowly, and we're just going to keep pulling it out of the ether of the glitched inventory so we don't have to actually put in the work to get them, along with buying a little bit of gear as well. The way I got my money is that specifically based on Rolf's values, the Laconia helmet was slot 17, so I just sold it and just got all the money that I need to get. Go ahead and equip A here. She just needs weapons. She doesn't need anything else. Then we're going to pull from roll slot 21 through 24. 21 through 24, pull from his name. And the way to change the value for his name is, of course, to change the letters. So the name ABWX is actually very, very intentional. Because if you, so when I go to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 21 refers to his first letter, and if you change the letter, then I'll change the item that I pull from that slot. So the letter A relates to a helmet, and you can literally see his name. The A turned into a check mark. I just literally pulled an item from the name, and the game's like, yeah, cool, so you did that, and then it keeps track of that too. And so the order of the name is whatever, you know, but as long as it's those 4 letters, then it'll pull the exact items that we want. There we go. So just to kind of backtrack on everything, like again, like just about every slot I'm pulling from is based on the next person's defense or agility for the most part. So again, if you're messing with those values, you can pull different items from the same slot. And then for those 4 items that I just got, you're just literally pulling it from Rolf's name, because each letter has its own value as well. So here, like, I'm giving Amy a very specific defensive value, so that when I go into her defense slot, out the day slasher, and then so that's that. And then I'm going to change her defense again. And this time it's the Nay Shield because I changed her defensive value. So that's every key item that I could possibly need for the game. You just kind of need some various items to get through, and then I'm just going to buy a bunch of antidotes on Rolf's inventory here. Really slowly. Basically, I'm looking to see that all 4 boxes turn black, and I'm counting 29 from there. Do the same thing for Rudo. He shouldn't need quite as many, but we'll still take a lot. Cool. So basically, every antidote that I buy kind of just overrides the item slots one by one. One sec. And antidotes just happen to set a specific value of 5,140. And the important thing is eventually, once I buy enough antidotes and put them in specific slots, it'll set Nee's and Amy's stats to 5,140. So that's their HP total. You can see their HP values are just like kind of null because they have way too much HP. They'll have 5,000 defense, they'll have 5,000 agility. Their damage is going to be outrageous, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so from there, you're set. So we have the key items that we pulled out of inventory, and then we mess with the inventory to the point where now their stats are outrageous. So you can see me here is doing 200 damage, 450 damage. It also sets their experience value to 5,000. So you have to get through that too. And yeah. And from there, you're mostly just set. Like, there's just, like, unfortunately, there's no, at least for the American version, there's no, like, way to just warp to the end of the game or anything like that. So there's just still certain things you have to do. So there's certain things we have to play through, even though we're buff and we have everything we need. We still have to do certain things. So we'll go ahead and do that. The first thing we need to do is close all the dams. If you know the storyline, you know what I'm talking about. But before we can get to the dams, you also have to get the jet scooter. So that's actually the first kind of story content we're going to do. The thing about having ultra good stats is sometimes they're too good. So based on the weapon damage value and the defense of the enemies, the thing about your damage is it can wrap. And so there are certain enemies that I'm so powerful, I'll do so much damage, it wraps back to 0 or 1 or 2 damage. And so you kind of want to avoid those if you can. One of the other things I'm doing from time to time is every time I'm stepping, I'm entering the menu. If you time it right, every time you step in the menu, you actually don't increment the step counter at all. You still have to get the good timing for it, and every time the camera's panning, it will actually slow you down, so you don't want to do that. It's actually slower to do that than just roll the dice and see what happens. But there are certain times where it works out, and if you can just even save yourself one encounter, then it's worth doing. As long as you're doing it correctly. Struggling right now, but it's okay. Just like that was a lot. And then from there, like, obviously you're powerful enough to sit through every encounter. I just have it kind of memorized which encounters are easy to run from and which ones are not. And so I'm going to fight ones that I'm not going to successfully run away from. And I'll try to run from ones that you have a pretty high percentage chance of doing so. And you've seen me fight just about every encounter. It's just because I just haven't been very lucky. So for example, I'm going to target the mushroom first because she just did 0 damage. She does her damage and just wrap back to 0. It's just nothing we can do about it. So that's just another thing I have memorized too. I know which enemies Amy's not going to do any damage against, so I may decide to have her target someone else that she will actually kill. So I don't just waste my turns, basically. But yeah. This is absolutely the worst encounter you can get here. I think it's like a 60 or 70% chance to run from that, so that's the absolute worst time waster you can get. The run is actually really simple. It's like once you understand what you're doing, and then you just remember like what slots you're supposed to pull from and what changes you're supposed to make, you just do the same thing every time. And then from there, it's really just like encounter luck and things like that. So you just gotta talk to that Tabby, and he's like, come ride on my jet scooter. And then you go to the jet scooter and he leaves a note saying, I don't like jet scooters anymore, you can just have it. And normally you would take this jet scooter and progress through the rest of the game. There's other towns you have to go to, there's other dungeons you have to do. But again, we don't have to do any of that because we already have all the key items we need, so I'm just going to head straight to the first dam, which is the red dam. There's 4 of them. And yeah, so I hope you like this song. You're going to be hearing it a lot. Because again, there's 4 of these. You also get a nice taste of Phantasy Star 2 dungeon layout. First, there's that foreground that's pretty obnoxious. And then every dungeon is just like maze corridors forever that just are designed to absolutely get you lost. Now, obviously, like I know where I'm going, but casually it can be a pretty big pain in the butt. You may also notice at this point in time that I'm not getting god luck or anything like that anymore. Like there's just actually going to be no encounters in a lot of places. So the game undergoes some changes as you progress through the story casually. You fight monsters in the overworld. There's just certain dungeons you're supposed to do in a certain order. And eventually you hit a storyline trigger where you meet like May's like other half, and you kill her. And that's a story trigger in and of itself. So once you kill the boss is called May 1st, the game repopulates the overworld with robots and starts to populate these dungeons with enemies. Because technically you can get to these without, like, before you're supposed to. And the enemies would just wreck you and stuff. So the game, I guess the designers just decided, like, well, we don't want to do that, so we'll only put encounters in here when you're technically supposed to be here. But because I have all these key items and I didn't have to do any of that content and I didn't kill the boss, the game never actually triggers that change. And so it never actually populates any of the future dungeons because I never had to kill the boss. And so every dungeon outside of one is going to have no encounters because the game didn't know it was supposed to populate these dungeons because I never killed the boss. The overworld, though, I still will get encounters because they were always there anyway. But here in dungeons, this game kind of mockingly gets called a walking simulator because, like, that's just kind of what you're doing. So that's 1 dam down, 3 to go. They basically kind of form like a square or like a cross pattern, so in this case it just so happens that like it's just easier to teleport back to town. It's just faster to get there. No. Right on the last step. ahead and do the next one, I believe is the green one. Try to run from this one. 70% chance of success. Didn't work. All of your time losses tend to be very minimal like that. It's just like, did you get an encounter at all? You'll lose some seconds, right? Did you fail to run? You'll lose some seconds. Is it an encounter you have to fight? You'll lose some seconds. But otherwise, like overall, like nothing's ever really gonna kill the run outside of a 1 in 256 chance, which is, I've had it happen once. But there's no way it'll happen again, right? So it's fine. Everything's fine. This dungeon is actually really, really simple to navigate. It's one of the few. The way the game punishes you instead is by having this walk. Like, the dungeon is actually really small, but there's this segment of the dungeon you have to basically walk across the entire map. And the encounter rate is very old school. Like, you just get into a lot of encounters. So while this one's not complicated, you just get owned by encounters. But again, since we don't have any, it's just a nice stroll, man. Getting your cardio in. So it's like a lot of intense menuing in the beginning, and then a lot of walking in the middle, and then at the very end, a lot of praying. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a very three-dimensional speedrun, right? There's just totally a lot going on. Very different. I think I've covered everything from there. Glitch the inventory. Specific slots are attached to specific things like stat values and stuff. You can manipulate values to pull key items that you want. You avoid triggers, that's why I am not getting encounters. Oh, I guess this is another thing. So if I highlight the item, it kind of like stores it, and if I press B and C at the same time, it'll still bring up a use menu, and kind of uses a phantom item from this glitched inventory that will just use whatever stored item that I used, and that way I can have one item pipe, which halves your step counter increment, but I never actually use it. So as far as the hide a pipe, depending on whether you're in the scooter, the overworld, or a dungeon, every step increments a value by a certain number, either 4 or 2. And there's some hidden value that's, we'll say, like, after this encounter, once the step value hits 100, that's when you're going to get your next encounter. And every step on the world map, if you're walking, increments it by 4. So once you increment by 4 all the way up to 100, then that's when you get your encounter, and the hide a pipe halves that, so instead it'll increment the step counter by 2 every step, and obviously then it'll take you longer to get that encounter. And then you kind of combine that at certain times where you can, what we refer to as menu stepping, then you can not increment the step counter at all, and so again, you're then just pushing off encounters as much as you can. So just lots of like little tech. I think that's about it. It's just a game that's just really hard to get through casually, mostly like just based on really, really old school design of just like you have to get levels, but getting levels is really slow, and blah blah blah. That you can just negate all of that in the 80% speedrun because you can just cheat. And then it just becomes a non-issue, just a nice casual game to play. This should only really end up taking me to finish maybe, I don't know, 42 minutes or something like that. Whereas I believe there's some Japanese runners in the past that have ran this game glitchless, and I think it's like 5 or 6 hours or something like that. Which is still pretty impressive, to be honest, given how long it typically takes to get through this game. guess there's just a lot of lore we're skipping too, because you're just legitimately skipping the content. The game kind of starts off with like climate's getting jacked. It's usually run by a computer, and there's monsters appearing all over the place, which is not normal. So first you investigate the source of the monsters, and you shut that down, and then you figure out, and then the climate goes out of whack, so then you have to go to the climate center and try to fix it, which is where you meet Nate first and kill her, and then you kind of get set up as criminals. Like, you get framed for basically all the bad stuff that's happening. So the trigger then becomes like the villain of the game. Hang on a sec. Then sends robots after you, and that's again the trigger of like, oh, we have to change the encounters because now it's you solved the monster problem, but now there's robots coming after you. And you decide like, it's cool, we don't care. The next thing we have to do to try to like make sure the climate doesn't screw people over is open these dams so things don't get flooded. So that's what you're doing right now. Again, it's a process that would take a while because you have 4 confusing dungeons to get through and all the encounters, but just skip all those. There are actually a lot of enemies in this game, but because you don't do most of the content, and the content you do, you don't have encounters, right? So there's actually not that many encounters I have to memorize as far as run chains. It's actually really simple. And for the most part, all the recolors have the same run chance, so you don't have to really worry about that very much either. This is the last one, the Blue Dam. It's super confusing. It's like, when I'm rusty at the game, I might go the wrong way. Just because it's really tight corridors, really similar looking rooms, but like, I think there's a total of 17 transitions in this dungeon. Which is kind of obnoxious. Yeah, the foreground is like really stupid. And they didn't really learn their lesson for a minute, so when they made Phantasy Star 3, I guess technically a different team, but still, they kept the foreground, and it will scroll in the opposite direction of where you're walking, so it just like completely like screws with your vision. That they got rid of for North America, but that's what the J version was doing that. I guess I've played enough for the most part, like until like it comes up. I don't really notice it too much, but yeah, it's pretty dumb. We're like halfway through this dungeon. I don't know about y'all though, but I'm a fan of the game soundtrack at least, so it's not bad to just sit back and chill too. It's definitely a game that's gonna restart the music every time you get an encounter, so you can just sit back and listen, because I don't have any encounters, it's not a big deal. Yeah, so this dungeon is like 5 floors. They're all fairly wide, and they all have like 8 different sets of stairs or something like that. So you're just traversing the same 5 floors and going through their different stairs over and over and over again to go from like one side of the room, like going up to the left and then going down the middle and then going back up on the, something like that. Where it's just like a super artificial way to make the dungeon last forever. But thankfully we're almost there. Yeah, it's just this one more. this whole climb is to get to this specific room where I have to fall down a giant hole in a very specific, well, in fairly specific spots, so that I can reach this console that's inaccessible because it's just surrounded by a pit for some reason. I don't know. It's whatever. And then from here, the game, I guess lore-wise, it's like they kind of catch on to your plan. So you can do the dams in any order, and the game just knows when you're doing the 4th dam. You'll trigger this boss fight that's absolutely unwinnable. So I'm just gonna run. And what they're gonna do is this 3rd attack here. They're gonna trap me in plasma rings and then send me to prison. So now I'm in this satellite called Gyra with damage tiles. You have these plasma rings, so if I were to get encounters, you can actually not act at all. You have to try to run away every time. And so that's the whole dungeon, is you're probably going to get an encounter every like 8 steps, and then you have to try to run from it while they just slowly beat you to death. And then to make things even more interesting, as you slowly get beaten to death, there's also damage tiles you have to walk through. So it's, again, like just classic JRPG design from, a billion years ago. Enjoy this sound. Should I just stay here for a while? Just kidding. There are cutscenes in this game. They're throwbacks to the first one, so it is essentially a direct sequel. It makes direct references to the first game. There's a character in the first game that's in this game as an NPC as well. This game just takes place at least 1,000 years after. And then you wake up to our boy here, Clear Tonic. He's a pirate. He just picks you up from a satellite before it crashes into a planet and destroys the entire planet.
That's me.
And then it loads a cutscene, right? It knows to do that, but because again I didn't do any of the story triggers, it actually just loads the first cutscene again. So that's the cutscene I get in the beginning of the game. This is the first conversation you have with May in the beginning of the game. It actually gets rid of my entire party because you're not supposed to have a party in the beginning of the game, so I have to go through the recruitment cutscenes again and put them back in my party. Which is fine. And now we can take the next step, which is to go to the roof, where we have a spaceship, and a Dizo, for some reason. And then we're gonna hit Skewer here. So Skewer is like this weird hybrid map that I don't understand at all. There are encounters because it's technically part of the world map of Dizo, even though it's like a spaceport. But then, even though it's part of the world map in a way, you still can't hide a pipe, so I can't do that. And so you just kind of have to deal. So this is like just one of the really, really heavy RNG areas. Because there's just nothing I can do except really just pray that I don't get into a lot of encounters. Yep, they're just looking at the see a roll, you're dead. There's definitely, Phantasy Star definitely has some odd enemy design. But the animations are super cool, and was like the only game doing this kind of stuff at the time, or one of the only ones. And so like for its time was just like super awesome. Like it's just got a great look for its time. This time I'm not duping the hide a pipe because this is the last time I need to use it, so it's just faster for me to use it up. this is one of the worst encounters you can get. So I got a lucky wrap there, 255, and then I got unlucky with the 1. You can see their cool attack here. With their, like, spider intestines or something. They're really hard to run from, and as we're seeing, Amy is basically useless, so I'm gonna be here for a minute. I'm glad you guys got to see this too, kind of, though. This was like, in the speedrun, probably the weirdest enemy you're gonna run into. It's hacking in its intestines or something over and over again. But you can see why that's the worst encounter ever, because I have to just sit there for days. It's awful. It's okay though, we're gonna hit another good team here. This is just a dungeon you just have to get through to get to like the most important NPC in the game that you also have to visit at least twice. So you just have to do this dungeon as many times as you need to just anytime you want to visit him. Doggies.
Oh boy.
Harold's gonna be Harold, man. For this exact circumstance is typically why you take the time to pull out a Moondew. Moondew is not mandatory at all, but if you get into one encounter that you have to fight, chances are Harold's gonna die, and you actually can't progress without him. And the NPCs won't let you in if he's dead, so you just have to keep the item just in case. Show you what I mean. Okay, so you have to go through that dungeon every time you want to go to Esper Mansion here. And there's 2 NPCs that sit in front and they say, "You are not ABWX, please leave." So as I revive him, and they're like, "You must be AWX, like, come on in." Here, I initially thought you were supposed to talk to both NPCs, but actually, you can just talk to the same NPC twice, and it still triggers the cutscene. So as long, I guess it just checks if there were 2 dialogue boxes, then start cutscene. I don't know. No, I just can't talk to him again. Here, the music's gonna glitch out and soft lock the game. So the way to do that is to pause a lot. You see that thought pop, like, oh, thought. Grab the mace sword, say yes, I'm ready to go, and then he teleports you to a spaceship that's full of pink corridors. It's a 2-floor dungeon, but both floors are just massively large. They're outrageously difficult encounters here, but again, I will not run into any of them. So we're just gonna walk our way to the last 2 bosses. That's where we start the praying, because the bosses, even despite how strong I am, are not overly short. And then, yeah, there's just a lot of RNG, depending on, well, both bosses just have different kinds of RNG. It'll screw you over. We just gotta get there. Most people agree music's pretty on point in this game, but most people also feel the boss theme, which you technically heard once already. I got attacked by the enemy eyes, you'll hear twice. Most people seem to not be a fan of it. Maybe, at least as boss music, maybe just like out of context, maybe they like it, but as boss music, they tend to not like it. It's definitely a very different direction to take for basically on a mission to figure out who is behind all the terrible things that are happening. This is supposed to be the place that contains all that evil. We're equipped and everything to deal with it. This is the correct way to go, where you're blocked by a treasure chest, so you open it, and you learn that inside the treasure chest is Dark Force, the second to last boss. And yeah. So the last two bosses are so big, you don't know how much damage you're doing because it doesn't have that crossbar in the middle and the top. He has two things he can do. He can curse, which he just did to Rolf, and that curse has 6 different effects that can happen, and then, or he can do a AoE. So here, curse for go. And the other thing that'll prolong this fight is if you miss at all, which I've done so once. Basically, at this point in time, what would be ideal is if he AoE from here, but he's not, so... The problem with the curses is that, it, at worst, could just completely debilitate the character and have to do nothing. So here we go. Or, and at best, halves your attacks, so it just really slows you down. And then the mechanic of the game is you have the Mace Sword and it can randomly dispel the curses, but it's random. And so that boss is just absolutely, like, the worst, actually. You can just get locked, and he'll just AoE you down, so he'll just curse everybody, and everybody's just sitting there jerking off, basically. There's nothing you can do about it. But whatever, it's fine. And we gotta fight Mother Brain. Right text boxes here. Just kind of sit. So we've learned that even though I have heavily glitched out stats, you can still miss a lot. Mother Brain just comes programmed with something like you just have a straight 20% or 30% chance of missing. It doesn't matter what level you are or what weapons you have or anything like that. You just have this flat chance of missing just because it's Mother Brain. So I'm in no danger of dying at all. But the more that I miss, the more the battle is prolonged. Time is after the fight. It will not be like at completion, so I'll let you know. But it will come up very soon after you guys. So that's the boss there. Text mashing in this game is so satisfying. So here's like the spin on the game. Time. So that was probably like what, a 43 or 44?
It was a 43.
So there you go, that's the game. It turns out the people who are behind everything are people from Earth. They destroyed their own planet and now want to take over yours. And it's left to your imagination if you kill them all or if they kill you. It's like a super dark ending. Basically, there's Phantasy Star 2. A glitched mess. And then you walk and then you pray and then you beat the game in 40 minutes or less. So there you go.